Okay,
well
we're up
done.
to 26 now.
Good.
So I think we'll just give it a minute, because as we're all from church congregations, as we know, there are always a few that sneak in after the thing has started. So we'll just be patient and wait for those for a second. Thanks for those who were waiting outside the door. We were sort of getting ourselves organised in here, the ones that are due to speak. And we had a problem with one of our speakers not being able to turn his sound on, but we've got over that now and we think we're good to go. So I think we'll make a start now. It's good to see you all this morning. I've missed you. It seems like more than a month since we last met, but thanks to everybody for taking the time and trouble to come this morning. I hope everybody is well and we're not suffering too badly from cabin fever during lockdown. We're all remaining sane and calm. I've just got a few admin points that I'd like to run through. The first one is to tell you, of course, that we are recording this morning's session. So if for some reason you decide that you don't want to be seen or you don't want us to see you, then turn your video off. And you can do that with a little button down the bottom. Otherwise, we continue. The next thing to say is, as before, we have muted your microphones. We will unmute you if you have a question to ask later on, but the reason, as you know, is that if we have too many people in a meeting like this unmuted, we get a kind of a hubbub build up in the background and it's quite a distraction. If you need to adjust sound, you'll see the little microphone at the bottom of the screen and next to it is an up arrow. And if you delve around in there, you will be able to adjust your sound volume. Normally it's pretty good on Zoom. They do a good job of somehow guessing how loud it has to be. So unless you're really stuck, I suggest you leave that alone. Now, do we remember the drill for asking questions? How to raise hands electronically? Well, the answer is that at the bottom of the screen, you'll see, oh, I see a couple of people are ahead of the game. Oh, well done, chaps. Show-offs. Anyone else want to have a go? Yeah, this is pretty good. Oh, yeah. All right, yeah, okay. I won't bother with that next time. What else have I got? Just finally on the admin. Oh, we don't need to do that, the trial, it's fine. So what I'd like to do now is I'd like to hand over to Father Tony and ask him to bless this morning's proceedings for us. Father Tony.
Well, normally, of course, we bless the meal we're about to eat, and we're missing out on all these bacon butties. So instead of that, we ask God to bless all of us taking part today. Open us to listen to what we're going to hear attentively and to respond thoughtfully. We also pray for each other, for our families and friends at this time. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. Now, it may surprise you to know that I have received one letter since last month, which I would like to read out to you. And it goes as follows. Dear Bill, I'm writing to tell you how much I enjoyed last month's meeting, particularly Colin's jokes. As you know, Colin's daughter was planning to get married today down in Canterbury. Sadly, due to the pandemic, this has had to be postponed. Colin is travelling down to Canterbury later on to meet his prospective in-laws, amongst other things. But if you are quick, you just have time to invite him to tell us a couple of jokes. Yours sincerely, Callum Tyler. Does anyone know a Callum Tyler? Callum Tyler? Over to you, Colin.
Okay. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to start with the first of 3 items I came across since our last men's breakfast. Bill, will you please show the 7 dwarfs?
Happy to, Colin. There we go. Have we had enough of that one?
I think so.
Okay.
Next, I would like to tell you a joke I came across last week. It was actually on the television, but the joke goes as follows. What do you call a lady who burns all her bills? What do you call a lady who burns all her bills?
I don't know, Colin. What do you call a lady who burns all her bills?
Bernadette.
Thank you.
Okay, on to the last joke. I'd like to end with this one.
Good.
This time it was sent by 2 of my daughters independently. They sent this joke to me. Now, not wanting to wait a long time, I rang B&Q yesterday and asked how big the queue is. What was their reply?
I don't know. What was their reply?
Well, the queue is the same size as the B.
Oh, very good.
B&Q.
Okay.
Okay then, that's my lot for today. So I wish you all an enjoyable breakfast and an interesting talk.
Thank you very much, Colin. I'm going to pass on over to James, who I've asked to introduce our speaker this morning, Kauser Akhtar. James, over to you.
Good morning, Father. Good morning, Kauser. Good morning, everybody. Just a very short introduction now. Kauser Akhtar works for the Diocese of Guildford as Faith Links Advisor. She has helped set up interfaith forums in Surrey, ranges of events and conferences throughout Surrey. She and her husband, who is lead imam at the Shah Jahan Mosque in Woking, have worked hard to integrate the oldest mosque in the country and its worshippers into the local community. And Woking has a thriving interfaith group, and there are 5 others in Surrey. The nearest to us here is in Epsom and Ewell. So we extend a heartfelt welcome to Kauser, who will be able to enlighten us about the principles and achievements of interfaith engagement. And there should be plenty of time for questions afterwards. So over to you, Kauser.
Okay, Kauser, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, James. Okay, so I'm gonna do 2 slides I'm gonna share with you, and then I'm gonna go off and then continue sharing. So let's see if this works. Oh, that's wrong. It's the wrong one.
I think that's okay, actually.
Can you see it?
Yeah, no, it's gone. It's gone again. You need to do share screen again.
Okay. Technology for you, eh? Right, okay, so I wanted to start with this one. And this is our greeting in Islam, Assalamu alaikum, and it means may peace be upon you. So peace be upon all of you. And I just wanted to start with this slide because it gives you an idea of where I'm coming from. People think interfaith is, and it can be, just a group of people who are interested in learning about other people's faiths and developing friendships at an informal level. But here in Surrey, it's very organized. As James has already mentioned, there are 6 interfaith forums, some of which are registered charities. They have a constitution, they have terms of reference. So it's done in a very organized and particular way. So I'm going to talk to you about Surrey Faith Links and what I do with the Diocese of Guildford. But alongside that, just so that you have an idea of where I'm coming from, I also represent, as James has said, the Shah Jahan Mosque in Woking, which is the oldest mosque, the first purpose-built mosque in UK, which was built in 1889. I'm also the chair of the South East England Faith Forum, so it's a huge area to cover. And there are so many interfaith forums across the South East, but also we connect nationally as well through the Interfaith Network UK. And locally we have something called the Surrey Muslim Association, which is about, I would say it's about 5 or 6 years old. And that is basically like a churches together group. So where you have local small churches together groups, this is a county-wide initiative for bringing mosques together at a platform to make communication easier between the mosques themselves, but also to the wider public as well. And I won't go into too much detail about that. Maybe we can leave that for the Q&A session. So I'm going to stop sharing there and now tell you a bit more about Surrey Faith Links. So Surrey Faith Links was funded by Surrey County Council in 2009 to the Diocese of Guildford. So it's contracted out to the Diocese of Guildford. And I would say the main aims, it's a very broad remit, but I would say the main aims are to be a conduit between faith communities, local authorities, and other voluntary organizations. And this is done through different ways. So I do a monthly newsletter, which everyone here is most welcome to subscribe to. It's a free newsletter, so you'll receive it as a PDF, and there'll be a link to a website as well. And that basically gives you information about local interfaith events, what's been happening, reports of events, future upcoming events, and just generic information about faith communities in Surrey and wider as well. And there's social media events and things as well that you can get involved in. Another main aim is to develop and build community cohesion, and I would say this is a large part of the role. It's about community cohesion, but particularly with faith communities, and that's done through interfaith work. Is to establish and maintain relationships with key faith contacts across Surrey. So as we all know, faith leaders are extremely busy, not always able to take part in interfaith. So as part of my role is to engage with faith leaders and key faith contacts across the county. So whether that's with a Buddhist monk, a Hindu monk, Christian priests, imams, rabbis, and so on. So it's not just interfaith, it's much wider than that. And when we say faith communities, I mean not just people who are affiliated with a place of worship. They are communities, faith communities that don't have a place of worship here in Surrey. So for example, the Baha'i community, they don't have a place of worship. There's a couple of Hindu temples, but they don't have more than that across Surrey. So there are areas in Surrey where there are Hindu communities, but they don't have a place of worship. And likewise with other faiths. So my job is to seek them out and try to engage with them as well, which is a bit of a challenge when you don't know where to look and who to contact. So another aim I would say is to be a voice for faith communities at various Surrey County Council meetings. And this is something huge that I've found within Surrey, to make sure that faiths and faith communities are represented at certain council meetings. And I can talk about that later if you like. Now, when James and Bill and myself, we got together, I was deciding what to talk about, and they sort of helped me by asking me certain questions. So I'm trying to run through them, and I'm going to try to answer them briefly. Some of them I'll share slides with you because it's easier, I think, to visualize rather than to just speak to you. So working for the Diocese of Guildford, why would they employ a Muslim, right? That's a very common question people think. Why would a Christian organisation, Church of England, employ a Muslim. Well, as this role was externally funded by Surrey County Council, the director at the time of it was called DSR, Department for Social Responsibility, which has now become the Communities Engagement Team. So that director at the time was Chris Rich, and he was quite open to the idea of having anyone from any faith, whoever was suited for the job should be able to do it. So, and that's basically it. So when you have externally funded projects, they don't always have to be somebody of a Christian faith, although it is a Christian organisation. So I think this was a huge step for the Diocese of Guildford and a really beneficial step as well. So the role was advertised publicly and widely. And at that time, it just so happened I was in Woking for 1 year, and I started to look for a job. And a friend of mine told me about the job. And I thought, sounds interesting. Not sure if they would employ a Muslim, but let's try it anyway. It's something I've always enjoyed. I don't know if you've figured this out yet or not by my accent, but I'm not from Woking. I'm actually a northerner. I won't tell you exactly where. Maybe we can have some suggestions later in the Q&A. You can try to guess where my accent is actually from, or where I'm from based on my accent. I've always kind of worked with different faith communities, and I think building bridges between communities is such an important role, and I thought it's a great challenge here in Surrey, so why not? You know, I like a bit of a challenge, so I thought, let's go for it, see what happens. And I was quite surprised actually that I was accepted for this role. But yeah, it's been really good so far. I'll tell you more about it. For me, it was just about a good opportunity to work with different faith communities. So now I'm going to share the screen again with you about some of the other questions that we went through. What have I brought to the job? That was a difficult one. I was trying to think, what have I brought to the job? Hopefully, awareness about interfaith, about faith communities working together, learning about each other's faiths and sharing what we have in common. But also, so it's not just awareness between faith communities, but also awareness, as I mentioned earlier, at different levels with Surrey County Council, with local authorities, with voluntary organisations. I've attended many meetings with charities and organisations where they know faith communities are doing a lot of work, but they just don't know how to link in with them. So hopefully I brought that sort of awareness. Diversity. Now diversity is important, and it's quite funny we're talking about diversity because this is a men's group. I'm the only woman here, but you know, it's purposely a men's group. But we try to have diversity generally. You know, we want violent gender equality. We want, you know, mixture of different faiths. We want different races. So I suppose my role enables me to do that, to sit at various meetings and say, have you got that level of diversity, and try to get that diversity. Breaking down barriers. So interfaith work is about creating a safe space for people to be able to ask questions that they genuinely want to know about. And I think sometimes people struggle to find that kind of place where they can ask questions without being judged or without feeling that they're going to offend someone. And this is really important in interfaith, to be able to feel safe to ask those questions, and also yourself not to take offense. So you all have the same level of understanding that we're all there to learn, to learn from each other without causing offense, and that hopefully breaks down barriers. So I've already talked about safe space. Enable faith communities to meet, share, learn and develop friendships, and that's really important. So these are hopefully some of the things I've wrote. Challenges of the role. As I mentioned earlier, my main way of getting into faith communities is through the faith leaders. So I'll try to find a place of worship, try to find out who the main person is to contact there, who will probably make the decision about interfaith or if they want to get involved. The challenge I found is that interfaith is not a high priority on the to-do list. There's so many other things that people have got to do that they just don't see interfaith as important. It's not really, okay, it's important, but it's not as important as, and then there'll be a whole list of other things that need to be done. Or it is important, but I just don't have the time for it. So that's a big challenge. Another challenge is the negative perception. So people might think it's a way for people to proselytize. It's, you know, if I get involved in interfaith, then someone's just going to be preaching to me about their faith and how good it is and how I should become a Christian or how I should become a Buddhist or a Muslim. So there's negative perceptions around about what interfaith actually is. Fear of the unknown. So I think that's a big thing. And I have found when I've spoken to people that they are afraid, for example, to go into somebody else's place of worship simply because they have no idea. You know, when you just don't know what to expect, there's that fear that holds you back. But once you take that first step, you think, oh, actually, it's not that big a deal. They're not so different from us. They're very similar to us, you know. But it's just that very first step, the fear of the unknown. What is this group going to, when I'm attending an interfaith event, what is it going to be about? It's just that fear prevents them from attending. And then another big one is the negative portrayal in the media. And this is huge. And you can see some of the images there that I've picked. You know, Black Lives Matter is a huge thing over the recent couple of weeks of the incident that we've had in America and its knock-on effect around the world. And you can see how there's negative perceptions around races. There's negative perceptions around people of faith. So, you know, a man with a beard and a turban because of negative media portrayal and constantly highlighting extremists. You know, and I've faced this quite a lot. I get common questions. One of the most common questions is about Islam and extremism and terrorism and things like that. And this is because of what is seen on the media. And you'll get the same, you know, with Christianity. You know, you will know better than me about the negative portrayal of Christianity in media. Why is the golden rule then? So what happens in interfaith? Basically, there's learning of each other's faiths, some sort of learning in some format. There's shared social action, and I'm going to show you some pictures about that. So it could be an interfaith forum comes together and decide we want to work together to do some social action. We want to come together and help a food bank. We want to do some work around the environment, do some litter picks and so on. So this, in the last I've been in this role for 9 years. In the last 9 years, there's been huge, you know, events where, whether it was social action or whether it was just meeting together to learn from each other. And if you've had a chance to read my profile, on average, I've attended around or taken part and organized 42 events a year. And there's more events that I'm not involved in that have taken place as well. So you could imagine the amount of events that take place annually on average. Obviously, because of the lockdown this year, that's going to be hugely affected. And interfaith forums are trying to do things slowly online. They've had a few Zoom meetings and these have been public events that people can attend, and there are some coming up as well. There's going to be an interfaith prayer vigil and a few other virtual tours and things like that, which I can speak about later as well. So things happening online that you might be interested in and like to join. Visits to places of worship, interfaith walks, I'll talk to you about that in a minute as well in more detail. There's some pictures I want to show you. Conversations with, so this is where you invite, and this is a type of format. So for example, you are, for example, your case here, you're an ecumenical church group. So you hold a regular monthly meeting where you invite 3 or 4 people from different faiths or the same faith, and you ask them questions like you are with me now, but I'm just generally talking about interfaith. But you'd invite someone to talk about their life as a Jewish person, their life as a Muslim person, and you'd have an opportunity to ask them questions. You might break out into smaller groups and then have discussions around certain topics. That's what we call conversations with. Another format is doing God together. So you'll get, for example, 3 or 4 speakers. It could be a priest, an imam, a rabbi, or a Buddhist monk, and you'll give them a topic, for example, life after death, and they will speak up on this topic, and then there'll be a Q&A session. So there's different formats to different type of events. And okay, and the last one is public events. Public events are, for example, we do a Peace Day competition in Woking every year, and that's celebrated at the Woking Town Centre. So, and that is a public interfaith. So what do they get out of it? I really like this picture. This is what they get out of it. I think this is beautiful. You've got a Muslim person, a Jewish person, a Christian, and what could be a Buddhist or a Hindu. Just looks like they're having breakfast, doesn't it? And although it says there, the world is our only home, be tolerant. I don't like the word tolerant, because I think tolerant is about putting up with, you don't necessarily like it, but you're putting up with it. Whereas accepting is much more better. So interfaith, what you get out of it is you learn to accept. First of all, you respect people at their level of humanity. And then you learn to accept that people have their own beliefs, they have their own faith, and they are just as much devoted to their faith as you are. And you develop a level of respect. You learn about all the commonalities that you have, even though your faiths and beliefs are different. You know, you'd find 80-90% of your beliefs and your faiths are similar. And it's just the way you might practice, your language might be different, but everything else is most of the time the same. There are crucial differences. It's not to say that there aren't differences, but it's about accepting and respecting those differences. So now I'm going to show you some pictures of events. These are events that have taken place over the last few years. And I wanted to limit the amount of talking I do now, so to allow you to ask more questions later. So this was an event in Elmbridge somewhere. And you can see that there's different people there who could be from different religions who are sat in a church. And you'll find that a lot of people, you know, because you're comfortable going to a church, that's normal for you. It's like home for you, isn't it? But for people of other faiths, it's the unknown. And it's like, should I be going to a church? Am I allowed to go to a church? What happens when I go inside a church? So when we hold an event in a church, it's an opportunity for people of all faiths and none to come and to sit and learn about something in a place of worship. You might recognize 2 of the people in this photo. Everyone's getting a bit closer to see the photos, I can see that. Yeah, that's James and Eileen there, you can see them. And this was an event called Faith and Inner Peace, where we invited people from different religions. You can see a Muslim, there's a Jewish person, the lady with the mic is Jewish. There's a Buddhist, she's from the Napil temple. Margaret, who's chairing the event. And the last 2, Suzette Jones and Dr. Phil, they came from a more of a mental health background. So Dr. Phil is currently the director of CAMS, and Suzette Jones is a former colleague of mine. So here, you know, we had a set topic, which was faith and inner peace, and each of the speakers spoke from their faith perspective. And I'm sure James and Eileen can tell you more about what they got from those type of events. And last year, was it last year or was it the year before? I can't remember now. It was the 800th anniversary of the meeting between Sultan Al-Kamil and St. Francis of Assisi. And actually, I didn't even know about this story until somebody pointed out the 800th anniversary. It was quite amazing. And you can see here, I chose these pictures for a reason. That's the first one is a group, a church group, youth group, who read and learned about the story and enacted some of it out. So they made a play out of it. And this event is also in a church in Guildford. And they acted out the story and the meeting between the Sultan and the Saint. For those of you who don't know, this was during the 7th Crusade, I believe, where the two met to establish peace. So both of the two were quite similar in their style of thinking, in their background, in their spirituality, and both wanted to make peace between the two groups, the Muslims and the Christians. And you know, through the meeting, St. Francis, when he went back, was quite influenced in his teachings and the way he taught afterwards. And there's actually some of his, don't know what the right word to use is, but his readings, his prayers reflect that, where he's, for example, put the attributes of God, which he would have learned from the Muslims. We have the 99 attributes of God, and those are still used today. I was given a copy. I was at this event and I was given a copy of that. So it was really interesting. If you don't know about it, I'd recommend looking into the story. It's really good. And there's a film that's been made about them as well, which is available online. And the next picture is, I think this is what, for me, is the core of interfaith, the core purpose of interfaith. And it's developing that friendship. So you've got the vicar of the church, and you've got the local Muslim leader. He's the chair of the local Muslim, there's no mosque in Guildford at the moment, but and that Muslim community were using the church hall for prayer. And the vicar is presenting the candle as a symbol of peace, as a symbol of friendship to the Muslim. And that for me is what interfaith is all about. It's about developing friendships and that relationship. I just think that's beautiful, where places of worship are able to open up so much that they allow people of other faiths to perform their worship if they've got the space for it. And the one at the bottom, that's Father Andrew from St. Nicholas's Church in Guildford with a Muslim lady, and they were basically stitching buttons onto a banner to mark the occasion. And here later you can see people coming together and celebrating with food. Food is an important part of interfaith. You know, bringing people together, you need food. It's unfortunate we can't share food today, this morning. It has to be a virtual thing. But you can see there are people in the church. So visits to places of worship. The one on my left, top left, is the Napil Buddhist temple. Recommend visiting it. It's really good. We were guided through the temple, and one of the monks, he did, I think it was a 5 or 10 minute mindfulness session or a meditation session. You can do different things, and they'll tell you about what they do and things like that. And then on the top you can see walking people of faith visiting the mosque. The one on the bottom left is a Zoroastrian temple, and the one on the right is fairly local to you. It's in Epsom, and it's a Hindu temple, and you can see the back of James there again. It's got around quite a bit. I think Eileen was there as well. So when I talked about social action, this is one of those things. This again is in walking in the Lakeview area, where we had people of all faiths come together and do some tree planting. And yes, sometimes we do manage to get MPs wanting to join us, you know, for the photo session. They want to make the most of the occasion as well and get their faces on the local media. So we have councillors and MPs joining us. Another way is through football. We do in Woking, we do an annual football interfaith tournament where we have church groups involved. We have the local Hindu Sikh groups, and of course the mosques. To date, the mosques are unbeatable. Sharjah Mosque wins every year, and in the end, it's a battle between the Shia and Sunni mosque. Either the Shia mosque wins or the Sunni one wins. And we also do annual cricket as well, interfaith cricket. And we're planning on mixing the groups up because we want to make it a bit more fair. So we might get Christians, Muslims, Sikh, Hindu playing within one team against a mixture of others, rather than Christians versus Muslims and so on. This is the annual Peace Day competition that I was talking about. You can see, for those who are familiar with walking, that is in Mercia Walk in the town centre. And this is done every year. And again, we involve the schools. The competition is with primary age children, and we'll pick a theme which relates to peace in some way. The children have to either write a poem or make a poster, and then it's judged, and we invite the mayor to give prizes to the children. There's singing on the day. There's last year, we invited the local primary school to do a play as well. So you can see children there dressed up for that. And this is the children receiving their prizes with them from the mayor. And we do face painting, so you can see that. Henna with peace symbols, origami. You can see a singing group there. And the children's winning entries are put on display so people from the public can see them. It's a proud moment for the children. You know, we have to celebrate it. I think youth are our future, so we need to focus on them as well. But the advantage here is you get the children coming, but they will bring their parents along as well. So that's really important. You know, we give an opportunity for people to write a message of peace. And that's it. I don't want to talk too much. I don't know how long I've lost track of time. I want to give time to you guys to ask questions. So let's stop sharing this.
Okay. Shall we, let me just go back to gallery view. Thank you very much, Kauser. And do we have any questions? I see Mr. Trappool put his hand up and put it down again. Clive, did you want to ask a question? Hang on, I need to unmute you. There we go.
Hello, good morning, Kauser.
Good morning.
When
You're a little faint.
When you say Muslim, are you referring to Shia or to Sunni, or doesn't it matter?
In what context?
Well, you've been talking about Muslims meeting with other faiths. Which
Right.
Are you talking about one or other or both?
I'm talking about all Muslims. So when I talk about faiths, you know, there are denominations or sects within all faiths. So you have within, as you are familiar with Christians, within Buddhists, there are different denominations. Within Judaism, there are different denominations. Even within Hindu and Sikh, there are denominations. So when I talk about Muslim, I'm talking about as a whole. And the Surrey Muslim Association, in the whole of Surrey, there is only one Shia mosque, and the rest are all Sunni. But because I was asked this question quite a lot about, firstly, what is the difference between Sunni and Shia? And then usually the follow-up question is, why is there conflict between Sunni and Shia? My reply to that is usually there isn't a conflict. Not here in UK anyway. There might be in other parts of the world, but that's more political rather than religious. And here in Surrey, our Surrey Muslim Association chair is actually the Shia Imam. We have very good relationships, and we know up and down the country, because I'm involved in national Muslim meetings as well, including Muslim Council of Britain, Minab, and Imams Online. They all have Shia, Sunni, Imams represented on there.
So there isn't much difference, by the sound of it, between the two branches then?
There are theological differences between the two. They started off as political differences around who should be the leader or the Khalifa after the Prophet. So those kind of political differences, but over time there have been slight differences, but mostly I would say 80-90% are the same.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any more raised hands? I'm looking for raised hands. Well, I have a question for you. Oh, hang on. Jeremy has raised a hand.
It's Malcolm as well.
Let me just unmute him. Any second now. Oh.
Thank you, Bill.
Jeremy, there you go.
If you were in a position to wave a magic wand and change something in Surrey, in the interfaith space, what would it be?
I would like to, for me, it's preaching to the converted. People who attend interfaith events largely are already open to the idea of interfaith. I would like to extend it to where it's really needed. So in Surrey, we don't really have an opportunity to engage with people of other faiths. We're not as diverse. In Woking, I would say there's more opportunity. But where you are, for example, in Ashtead, what are the chances of you engaging in interfaith? And it's not something we can control. It's, logistics, demographics. But now, because of technology, we've been able to connect, even though I'm in Woking, you're in Ashtead. So I think if there's a genuine desire, it's possible, and maybe now that people are using technology, maybe it'll become more possible. So I know conversations happen in the pub or within your local friendship groups and circles, and you have genuine questions, and you want to know, is this really true? And without offending someone, and you don't already have a relationship with someone that you can ask in a friendly way. So for me, it's about creating those opportunities for those type of people.
Thank you very much.
Okay, Mike King. Just trying to unmute you. Hold on.
How's that?
That's great.
Hello, Kauser. Thank you very much for your talk. That was really interesting. It's most encouraging to find you, a young lady, working with this rather than perhaps it being somebody more mature and older.
And with a beard.
Yes, and with a beard and all that. That's terrific. That's terrific. But actually, on that point, do you find that I know that you're saying that quite a lot of the time you're preaching to the converted, but where you do get the opportunity to speak to a broader audience, do you find that people generally are interested in this neck of the woods, or do you find that there is an automatic resistance to it?
I do find that people are, there's a mixture, because there's almost a battle with people who see faiths as the problem. Religions are the cause of conflict and war, and they are the ones that are causing division between people. So there's that style of thinking. There's aggressive atheism to be fought with as well.
Yeah.
And then for some, it's just not a priority. It's just not, well, I'm okay to it. Just a bit like the Black Lives Matter thing. There's, people opposing it think, well, all lives matter. So for some, it's not seen as an important thing. I'm open to all faiths. I don't need to engage with it. But when I've attended church groups, I've always found people are genuinely interested, and it's welcomed hugely, and it's almost like a relief for them to hear. And for me, it's like, I would want more opportunities where Muslims can speak to people of other faith. And, even when I started working at the diocese, because when you daily meet people, you develop friendships with your colleagues. And I'd have colleagues saying to me, I wish all Muslims were like you. I wish other Muslims, I was thinking, but what makes you think they're not?
Mm.
Because if they hadn't met me, they would have thought the same of me, right? And I think, but they are like me. What makes you think they're not like me? And when I look back at it, I think it's just because they haven't had the opportunity to develop. I think when you're at uni or working in London or places where there's that diversity, you've had that opportunity. And so you've learned that Muslims, Jews, or whatever, they're just the same as anybody else.
Do you think it's to do, I'm sorry, I'm asking a rider, Bill, is that all right?
Go for it.
Do you think that the media are a block to that? Because the presentation of the media, these days particularly, it seems that no good news is news, it's all bad news, and therefore the faith presentation generally, not just Muslims, is always about the negative aspects of what happens within the faith communities.
I mean, you could look at it positively, because if media didn't have all these news, I know it's negative, it's very negative, but if they didn't, there wouldn't be an interest as well in wanting to know. So it's created an opportunity to ask questions.
Yeah,
so I take that as an opportunity to, unfortunately, I do get asked very negative questions.
Of course.
But I take that as an opportunity to then to educate and raise awareness. So it depends on how you look at it. They have caused a lot of damage. I agree with that, the negative portrayal. Muslims themselves haven't helped themselves as well, I think, in certain parts of the world, because, and this is, I haven't mentioned, but one of the other things I do in my role is faith and cultural awareness training. So I attend different organizations, groups, and cover all the faith and cultural elements in detail. And alongside that, I also do talks about, misconceptions and things like that. So I use it as an opportunity to talk about the true teachings of Islam. And within there, I talk about the difference between religion and culture. And you'll find that Muslims practice their religion different depending on which part of the world they are. And just because they're doing things in a certain way doesn't mean they're actually following Islam. Actually, they're following their cultural ways of life rather than what Islam teaches. And you find that with all faiths.
Yes, of course.
In how Christian is practiced in Africa, in America, to China, to wherever, it's going to be different. But I like to talk about Islam from its core source, which is primary source, which is the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet. What do they say? Because that is what Islam is actually about. How it's practiced by humans is a different thing, and whether that's done right or wrong, in the right way or wrong way.
Thank you very, very much, and thank you for speaking to us today.
Thank you.
Malcolm, I see you have your hand raised. I'm just unmuting you.
Thanks, Bill. Thank you, Kauser, for that very interesting talk. A couple of things. You mentioned how restricted in a way in Ashtead we are to practice interfaith, but I just want to flag up and then move on to another thing. But we have had the privilege of welcoming a Syrian refugee family into Ashtead in the last 12 months. And that's been a Churches Together initiative through the community sponsorship scheme, and it's been really successful. And the family are settling in really well. So we've been challenged as a community to welcome them in, and they played their part. And I suppose just following on to that, that family, along with the rest of us, are affected by the pandemic, and you mentioned the lockdown, and that's tended to restrict us in lots of ways. Although the churches here in Ashtead have found various ways of responding, both in terms of sharing, practicing our faith, but also community action. Obviously, interfaith activity has had to change. You mentioned you've had to change the way you do things. Has the lockdown, has the pandemic created any positive opportunities, perhaps, to encourage interfaith activity on the ground? That's my main question.
I think in the beginning, in Surrey, we were quite slow in getting things forward. I think people were busy within their own faith communities, because most of the people involved in interfaith are, heavily involved already with their place of worship. So whether it was a church or mosque and so on. For me personally, it was working with our mosque, and I don't know how many of you are aware, we set up a food bank. So we've got 3 halls here at the mosque, and our 3rd hall was completely converted and made into a food bank specifically for this pandemic, to address, to help our local community. So I think it's natural for people of faith to kind of deal with issues that are imminent and important directly at that time. So for faith communities, it's about just getting on with it. And then later on, as time progressed, 1-2 months down the line, I noticed interfaith forums started to communicate. Generally, they were checking up on each other, hope you're doing well, sort of thing, with emails going around. And as naturally people started to take up on things like Zoom, then the ideas emerged, why don't we have a Zoom interfaith meeting? Why don't we do this? And Interfaith Network were sending out resources and information as well, which helped. So we're still a bit slow. I think we could have been a bit quicker, but there are some opportunities. And, here in Walking People of Faith, we're looking at the autumn and onwards as well, because this is going to continue for quite a long time now. It's not expected that we can have physical meetings. So I think all the interfaith forums are slowly looking at doing things more virtually now through Zoom. And that has, opened it up now, because if you're on one part of Surrey, you might have been reluctant to travel 15, 20 miles to attend an interfaith event. Whereas now, just sitting in your own home like we are today, you can join an interfaith event in the comfort of your own home. There's no fear of the unknown. You're in the comfort of your own home. And, although someone's behind a screen, you can, safely ask any questions you want and engage with people.
I'd really just like to now ask Father Tony to say a few words of thanks. It's particularly appropriate, as a friend of mine pointed out to me, that we ask Father Tony because he is a man you know, but you may not know that he wears several hats. You know him as a parish priest. He is also Canon Provost, so that means he is the leading canon in charge of the chapter of canons at the cathedral, and somebody's given up in disgust. And he also has a special role within the diocese as, and I need to take a deep breath when I say this, Episcopal Vicar for Ecumenism. Okay? So now if I can just get you unmuted, Father Tony.
Right.
Over to you.
Despite all that long list of things, I think I want to say a big thank you to Kauser for what you've given us this morning. Very interesting, very thought-provoking. One thought struck me particularly, that's the idea of the ignorance we have, because even educated people have wildly erroneous ideas about what others actually believe. That's true certainly among Christians, and we're constantly being surprised by discovering what people actually believe from what we think they believe. But the value then of interfaith dialogue with a real openness to listen, not to have our opinions confirmed, but to listen to each other. I think you're a wonderful example of that for us. So I think a huge thank you. Again, I think many Christians sometimes feel a conflict between this and their faith. There isn't at all. In many ways, as we learn more about each other, our own faith gets deeper, but we also realize much more how much we do have in common. So a big thank you, Kauser, for what you're doing in Surrey, and also for what you've given us this morning. So thank you very much indeed.
Yes, here.
Thank you. Okay. So I think that wraps up the proceedings, but
where does Carlisle come from?
Sorry?
Oh yeah.
Where does Carlisle come from? Is it Newcastle?
No. How can you say that's Newcastle accent? I can't understand Newcastle.
Where are you from?
So I'm from Lancashire. It's a small town called Nelson between Burnley and Corn. Anybody heard of it?
Mm.
I call it the ghost town because very few people have heard of it.
Never heard of it.
You must have heard of Burnley.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
It's right next door to Burnley.
Terrific. Well done. Thank you.
Just before I close the meeting, there is one other thing. Kauser mentioned diversity, and one of the things that's going on in the background is that there's a small group of us who are working on a speakers program for 2021, would you believe? And one idea we had, and we think is we'd like to put to the group, is actually that we should have a meeting next year, big breath, where we invite the ladies to attend.
It's truth.
So I know this is absolutely revolutionary thinking, but there's a couple of interesting points here. One of them is that this video and previous videos which we've made out of these recordings, we've put on our Facebook group, and most of the feedback that comes has actually come from women watching the videos. And although I haven't spotted it so much this time, as you look round the windows, the other thing that you notice is that there are a few women in the background who are kind of interested in what it is that we do. So I'd like to have a vote. I'd like to do a bit more hand raising. One last hand raise before we go. And the question is this: do we think it's a good idea that we do this? So I don't care whether you raise your hand electronically, you raise it, I can see a few hands waving, or how you do it, just let me know. Oh, okay. Well, I've got another screen to visit. Oh, blimey. Okay. Well, I think it's overwhelming. It's not universal, but overwhelming. I think people do think it's a good idea. So it will happen at some point next year. And we hope it's going to be for a physical meeting when we can get back to having proper meetings with sandwiches and so forth. This is fun. We kind of enjoy doing this, and it's lovely that we can continue and listen to our speakers. We'd also like to be able to sit down at the table with each other and enjoy some food as well. Okay, so thank you, everybody. And I think that concludes this morning's meeting.
I just say thank you to Bill and everyone who's organised and invited me to speak today and give me the opportunity to speak as well. Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you
very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.